Hello and welcome to this video. My name is Grace with creationalcodes.com. Thank you so much for checking out this video. This is episode 4 of the Energy Work series part 2. So I highly recommend you check out the last part of episode 4 before you watch this one. In the last episode, we talked about good and bad dimensions, duality through dimensions, selves and dimensions, and what are dimensions. And in this video, we are going to be breaking down the first dimension through the 12th dimension, why dimensions matter in field work, and finding your own meaning and allocation for each dimension. So yeah, I'm excited to have you here with me as well after this part of this series. Please let me know what kind of concepts or ideas are coming through for you that you would like to have introduced in the Energy Work series. We have done so far dimensionalities, working with dimensions, working with color and being source directed, how to interact with self, how to claim your space and tools, and a lot of information inside of fieldwork allocation, fieldwork tools that you can use inside of all of those conversations. So please like and subscribe to this channel. Please like this video. I'm so thankful that you're here with me, and let's dive in. All right, fam. So yeah, in the first dimension, So in the first video, we talked about what dimensions are, and tagging onto that, we're going to talk about each dimension inside of its information packet. So what does each dimension have to share with us? Why does it matter? Should we interact with each dimension? Are the dimensions, are there more that are better for me than others? That is probably a yes. So like I mentioned in the first video, there is a limitation in terms of what we believe we can connect with when we've only been introduced to the first through the third dimensional layers. So I'm going to be introducing you to all 12 dimensions today, kind of very lightly. Again, as I mentioned in the first video, I want you guys to have the ability to take this information in its simplistic form so that you can create what it is for you inside of your experience. I'm not here to tell you exactly what it is, because I believe that that really limits us inside of our self-expression and our unique interaction with Source God and our unique experience on this planet in this lifetime. So as I introduce each dimension, I very briefly kind of outlined them in quadrants of, dimensions. But yeah, everything that you hear in this video, allow it to be made for you and tailored to you as you receive it. So if you received dimensions as if they were DNA strands, and you perceived that in the lower dimensional realms you only had maybe 6 to 12 DNA strands, and that was your perception of self because you were in that lower dimensional frame of being, frame of mind, then you wouldn't have the capability or the belief to be able to interact with higher dimensional fields, higher dimensional realms, because you would be limited by those perceptions, by those DNA strands. However, if you perceived that you had 24 to 30 plus DNA strands, you might have an open mind and a belief system that you have access to higher dimensional planes, access to more information, access to more libraries, more abundance. And that is because of how you perceive yourself and because of how online and interactive and active your DNA is being with your spiritual form of self, your creational self, God, self, source. So yeah, this is the disposition that we start from. So maybe we've never interacted with any dimensionalities other than the 4th or the 5th inside of the spiritual community. There's this idea that we're going to be talking about later that, we're ascending into the 5th dimension, and this is our ascension timeline, and I'm going to be debunking that today. Yeah, it's all about what you believe you are capable of, what you believe exists in this universe, how vast is it, and what are you worthy of inside of your creationality and experience within it. Another quick PSA is that I believe that we all have the capability of turning on our DNA to its fullest and highest potential. People talk a lot about how there's a lot of junk DNA that we have, or that we only use a very small percentage of our brain capacity. And I believe this to be true. I believe ourselves to be very vast, and that we are only tapping into a very small potentiality of our capabilities, of our creational gifts, of our experience that we are meant to have here on this planet, within abundance, within imagination, within creation, within superpowers, whatever it is that you believe or would wish that your reality was. It is capable inside of your junk DNA, in my opinion, and inside of our DNA strands we can interact with and heal and literally become so liberated inside of self when we tap into this part of self that hasn't been connected to or turned on. So let's dive into the first to the third dimension. The 1 to 3D is very slow and in duality. Think of it as a place very far away from God and unification, and this is because it's in the lowest density form of self. So it's in its literally like first dimension. I talked about this in the first video. It's literally, if you looked at it, you know how we're being introduced to like 2D, 3D animation. If you looked at 1D as literally one dimensional, you only had perspective from that one view, that one angle of a reality from the first dimension, you would be very limited inside of your ability to like experience that reality. It would be kind of just formulated for you, and your expression of self would probably be super limited. You would have no idea about how beautiful and expansive you are. So that's like the first dimension. And then into the third, of course, we receive more and more access to understanding of self, and this is where we kind of start to perceive, maybe I'm more than just, you know, this matrix 9-to-5 job. Maybe I'm more than just this, you know, fast food and like all of this stuff that's keeping me alive. And that's because as we get and gain better and better awareness of, you know, self from higher and different perspectives, different angles, the third dimension, maybe you're looking at it as if 3D animation, you have a better and greater view of self. And from that point of view, you're going to be able to think even bigger, think higher, and start tapping into that junk DNA like we talked about. So this is where fallen consciousness has tried to keep humanity for a really long time. They've tried to keep us dumb and belittled. As well, lower dimensions, they lock down different parts of your body and different energy fields in your body, different energy centers. So in the first to third dimension, the heart is very much so traumatized. It's very locked down, it's stifled. And, you know, from this aspect of looking at it, you could even say, you know, that entities and energies and black magic curses and all of this stuff can kind of be placed inside of your energetic field. And locked into your energetic field, because if you are perceiving yourself inside of a way that is limiting or belittling to self, and if you have that belief system inside of self, entities are going to be running to anchor into your field, to make you believe that, to feed off of you, to feed off of your energy. And that's because you are chained in to something, trapped inside of an energy field. So the first dimension, second dimension, and third dimension, a lot of our energy centers are crumpled. They are exhausted. They are traumatized. That's why a lot of the beginning of a spiritual person's journey into greater embodiment is trauma work and reprogramming, and, you know, kind of reminding the sexual organs that we're safe, reminding the heart that we're safe, reminding the mind that the mind is not in control, kind of taking back the reins on this body, the spiritual body, physical body. So the heart will be locked down. Different energy centers may become dormant because the field gets so dense. And by dense, it's almost like you cannot see. It's like a cloud or a fog. And this is what a lot of people experience too inside of their like claircognizance or clairvoyance or clairaudience, is that it's like you can kind of perceive things other than self, or entities or energies or sounds or colors that are outside of what we would deem as like a normal reality of perception. but it's very cloudy and unclear. And this is because our energy centers and our light body spiritual fields have become dormant, and there has been like a cloud and a lock placed on them because of the traumatization that they've been through, because they've been, you know, kind of conforming to a denser reality inside of the body. And this is why it's really important that we do the work to remind the body of what it's capable. We do the work to remind the heart of what it's capable of, and what it's made of, and what it's made for. So how did we get lost in these lower dimensional planes? So this is a conversation, you know, they each to their own, whatever you believe in. In terms of like my evolution of self, I've come into the awareness that I perceive that the reason that we've been stuck in these lower dimensional planes in the human body is because it's been intentional in some ways. The planet is very coveted. This planet is very sacred. The human body is very sacred and divine, and humans have a very special ability to tap into the abundance codes of God, and the planet that we inhabit has the same. So when the first being decided that it wanted to separate from God and have an ego and have its experience of duality, or its experience of finding itself inside of its shadow, there was also the opportunity for that being to have a downward spiral into the deepest and most disgusting depths of that separation that it wanted to experience. And from that point on, you know, you have the mind involved, you have the ego involved, you have beings starting to come together to make groups or councils or planets that are fallen. It's just like colonies made. And from that point on, when you have like beings kind of coming together and deciding that this is how they want to live, and kind of taking revenge on something that is holy, or they feel wronged, or like they deserve better than what God wants, like, you know, when the ego gets involved, stuff like that. This has happened to numerous groups of beings in the universe, and it's their choice, you know, to have that experience and to spiral away from God. However, on a multidimensional level, you can perceive that, you know, all realities are existing at one time. So even while those beings are deciding to separate from God, they are still a part of God, because that is their origin point. And at this point in time, we've reached the accessing and the collective agreements that we are coming back into unification completely. So those beings are going to be coming back into wholeness with God. It's just it's just basically when everybody agrees to come onto the same page, which is going to take some time, but the energy is moving thus into a unification accordance. But these beings, they shredded humanity's knowledge of self to a point of desecration, hoping that they could continue taking what little remembrance of God humans had and feed themselves off of humans as they were just separate from God. So when you're separate from God, you're not receiving like as much life force or as much abundance or as much grace and divinity as you would be when you're with God and with creation. It's like swimming against the river. So these beings, you know, they deteriorated many planets. They thrive off of suffering because that is their cultivating, you know, like that's what they would call divine, or that's what they would call God, is this pain, because that's what they are working with, that's what they're choosing their reality is. So it's like when you decide that somebody's like mean to you, or that a reality is true even if it's not, and then if you get a resemblance of that reality being true, your ego kicks in right away and you're like, yep, I knew it. See, I told you it was true. And it kind of just feeds you like this endorphin hit of, yep, I was right, even though it didn't feel good to really receive that information. So that's what these beings are kind of eating and living off of. So in my opinion, there is a reason that we've desecrated and become mutilated into like a third dimensional body separate from God. And so these beings who fell and desecrated our human DNA, they exist not in the third dimension, but in the higher dimensional planes, and they want to keep us belittled so that we don't know how to heal ourselves. Because as soon as you gain awareness of your potentiality, you're immediately like, oh, well, I don't want to reside in that reality anymore. So they keep us to a point where we're separate from, like I said, clairaudience, claircognizance, divinity, even connecting with angels, all of that stuff. But these beings themselves are operating from fourth to all the way up until like 9th, even 11th dimension these beings can be operating from. The higher up in dimensions you go, the more divine things get, the more clear things get, because you become closer and closer to God. So these beings wouldn't be hanging out mostly in like the 11th or 10th dimension. I would assume there might be colonies of them that are, but for the most part I would say they hang out in the 4th to 9th dimension. And these beings are just filled with ego and fallen architecture, which is readying itself to come back into wholeness within. So then you have the 4th to the 9th dimensional realms, and the 4th to the 9th dimensional. So in the 4th and 5th and even 6th, probably, you have like this kind of playground of entities and energies that are liberated from the 3rd dimension, but are still not really like that high up in dimensionality. So they're kind of just playing around, hanging out. A lot of trickster energy in the astral fields. You hear a lot of people say like that they do astral projections or astral viewing. And when you enter into the astral field, you do have like this capability of perceiving much more information, much more, people can even view with their vision like locations. I think like this is like supposedly what they're training like government spies to do now, is use like astral projection and astral viewing to perceive like different locations, different information. And it basically is just like you're opening up a portal way into higher and greater potentialities of self, because in the 3rd dimension you wouldn't have potentially, or you don't have the capability of tapping into those superpowers, but in the 4th and 5th dimension you do. So when you tap into like those astral bodies where the subconscious mind is more active and the conscious mind is less active and the mind is less active, you have like this great opportunity to interact with a very great aspect of creation, which is you perceiving what you need to perceive when you need to perceive it. So there are many sacred, beings in these dimensions, but also fallen entities. So an example of this that I love is fairies. You could perceive that fairies, exist in the 5th dimension, in the like new earth kind of energy, and in the 7th dimension. But you could also perceive that they are very deeply connected and in complete reunification with God in the 12th dimension. And they also can exist at the same time in both locations. So they can simultaneously exist and reside in both dimensions and in all dimensions at the same time, like we talked about earlier on in this video, is that you can reside in all dimensions and reach wholeness. Or actually, I guess that was part 1. You can reach wholeness in and of self at any point in time when you decide that you are wholeness, and when you integrate all of your multidimensional versions and aspects of self into one. So that's what these entities and beings can do, like fairies. Entities can also be tricksters, so they can pretend to be ascended masters like Buddha or Kuan Yin, or an archangel that is connected to God. They might have like a fallen aspect, and what they're doing when they're interacting with you from this kind of fallen perspective is that they're trying to interact with you and get something from you or convince you of something. And the reason that they would do this is because in the 4th to 9th dimension, the ego is still very much so in control. So it's kind of they have a motive for themselves or for whatever it is that they're doing. Like they might have a fallen motive or an egotistical motive. But when you're in the 4th and 9th dimensional range, you can like shapeshift very easily. It's like effortless to shapeshift into whatever you want to be. Playing with the mind, like the mind is very quantum and the mind is very multidimensional. And if you have a very vivid imagination, you can easily perceive like how effortless it would be for a being to shapeshift into something, pretend to sound like them, give you information. And the reason that they do this, again, is because of a fallen ego construct. They want to inform you of something false. They want to get something from you. And when you come in, like, this is why whenever I work with dimensionalities or a being, I always like source it and like flush that being through the 12th dimensional God sphere, because, and you can command this in your field. Again, this is a part of like being a creator being, is that you have to take full responsibility for your work, for the beings that you're connecting with. It's nobody's fault if you decide that you want to interact with somebody or an energy or an angel in the lower dimensional realms and then you get potentially harmed. You need to take full responsibility for that and flush them out of the 12th dimension and make sure that, you know, they're kind of owning up to their residence, where they're coming from, what their intention is. Like, you deserve all of that information. It's no biggie for them. Like, if they want to interact with you, they'll give you the peace of mind knowing that, you know, you're in a fallen kind of world right now. You're in a lower dimensional plane. You don't have the time to deal with an energy that potentially could be harmful to your body. And so dimensions are very fluid. I mentioned this in the first video a lot, but it gets a little trippy when you start interacting with dimensionalities, because beings can exist simultaneously in numerous dimensions at the same time. So can you. And you can interact with these aspects of self anytime you want to, when you want to. It's basically just a workload of like taking the time to train your body to be able to do that, train your energy field to be able to do that, to maintain energy, maintain vitality while doing that. But like, that is what we are engineered and existing as and from. Like, we should effortlessly be able to do that. It's very organic that we should be able to do that. There's nothing crazy about it. It's all how you perceive it. If you perceive it as hard and difficult and not possible for you, then that is what you will experience. But if you decide, you know, that you are going to try it, that you want to try it, and this video isn't really about like me teaching you how to work with dimensions and how to kind of like cultivate that and bring that into your meditation. I will slightly at the end dive into that, but it's not much of a hands-on tutorial, so I can do that in the future for sure. But yeah, this is kind of just bringing up like what dimensions are, the capabilities that you have within dimensions, how they serve you, what you can do with them, why they matter. So yeah, dimensions are very fluid, and it's hard to conceptualize or put linearly, you know, like the fact that you can time travel in past and future at the same time and then merge them together and make peace with both of them. Like you can just do weird shit that doesn't make sense, but it works because like you can exist in numerous times, and there's a reason for all of it if it's what you're being guided to do. So I know on YouTube there's like a lot of information on 5D and the ascension timeline. And I'm not here to discredit anybody or tell you that they don't know what they're talking about, but there is a limiting belief and there's a glass ceiling that is being presented within the 5D timeline, because that is not New Earth. That is a very brief stationing that we will experience in our ascension. So in terms of my belief, we are going from the 3rd dimension probably all the way to the 12th dimension. Will we exist on this earth as 12th dimensional beings? It will be completely different. Like, I have no idea what that will look like, but it won't be in physical form. It won't be us, you know, having these routines that we do right now. But yeah, the 5D conversation is not our ascension. I would say 12 to 35 dimensionality is our ascension. And if you perceive yourself to be greater than, you know, the 5th dimension, like, we're on the same page. The 5th dimension is like, it's definitely an aspect of self, but it's not going to be like, it's not, it's not like where we're, that's not our destination. Like, that's not our final point. That's not like the finish line. That's like a brief walking to, you know? And the reason that I feel that the fifth dimensional timeline is such a big conversation is because this is kind of like the battle. I don't love using that word battle because there's no battle really. The battle's already been won. It's like, this is where people are going to be waking up. This is like where we need to start bringing awareness to people and doing our job and staying in remembrance of that which we are. There's no like negotiation of will we not, in my opinion. Like, there's never really been a conversation. We're always a part of Source. We've always been a part of Source, and we're kind of just assisting humanity in remembering that. And if you get on the same page as me in that we're already in that reality, like that's what I want to help people remember, because when we do that, it will be effortless. Like, we're already there, and we just need to like physically shift and physically shed all this trauma and heal this body. But it's not a conversation of will it happen, you know. In my opinion, that's just how I feel. But yeah, 5D is very limiting. It's not an exit point. It's, you know, it's a point that will increase humanity's unification with the one, but it will also lead to many confusions with AI and the ego, you know, thinking that we're going to be saved when the aliens come and we reach 5D and everything's a little lighter and brighter and that's it. Like, that is the very beginning of the ascension timeline. And, you know, the body and mind can be at 3D, and the spirit can be at 5D, or the spirit can be at 12D. It is true that the body will stifle our ability to enter the higher dimensional ranges or full embodiment. But the body is also working very hard to shift its density. So if you think about it, like, that's like the process that we just have to go through. You know? Like, the soul can be at 12D, the mind could be at 7D, the heart could be at whatever amazing epic dimensionality you're in, and the body could be at 3D. And like, these all exist at the same time, and it's like we're very gently just guiding the body out of this. Body doesn't limit us. Like, the body being in 3D doesn't mean that our soul and our heart can't expand into its greatest capacity of like 35D. So we're basically just working with the body to get it out of these traumatized lower dimensional density ranges. That's why when people pass away, you know, when they leave the body, they immediately regain like beautiful communication and remembrance of God, because it's like all of this density falls off of them immediately because it's stuck in the body. And it's very sad, you know, like the mind kind of gets entrained by the body and society. The 12th dimension is super easy peasy. The 12th dimension and higher is like, the 12th dimension is like what I would call like the gates of heaven. It's when you reach that point, you're in a state of reunification with God to a very grand degree. And of course, I wouldn't say that that's like the final ticket to perfection of ascended mastery, because you even have, you know, 35G, 40, like, I have no idea how many dimensions there are, but I assume there's like oh my god, it just, like, I think it's unending. But the 12th dimension, you're kind of reaching this place of gnosis, of awareness, of wholeness and unification. So you'll like come into recognition of ascended masters that are in complete cognizance of self and in direct uniform with wholeness and unification and unity consciousness. Angels, like, if you source all of your information, your interactions from the 12th dimension, it will be a very, like, you won't receive nasty things. I wouldn't say that it's like, you know, like I said, the ticket to where we want to be, like the exit point or the finish line, but it is like this kind of gateway or this doorway to safety and a place of reunification with a much greater, safer, more beautiful, more unified state of consciousness, and all the beings up there are going to be working within that field of unification. So that's the first dimension all the way up to the 12th dimension. Again, I very briefly broke them down. Like there's a lot of pieces that you can make for yourself and decide within, you know, if you want to work with star races, what dimensions they're from, angels, like there's so much that can be interweaved into that. But yeah, it's up to you. Like those are my kind of like guidelines that my higher self and guides have introduced me to. So that's my sharing with you. Why dimensions matter in field work is, you know, dimensions matter in fieldwork because dimensions are kind of like buildings or streets or cities. Like there's just different energies that we have the accessing of when we hang out in different dimensions. Like we just receive new things, we meet new people, we can interact with different selves, different layers of self, and it's basically just an ability to perceive wholeness in a different way and just get to know yourself better, get to know the wholeness of that which you are, the greatness and the vastness of that which you are, which really comes into our perception when we enter these dimensional states of mind, that we are multidimensional, that we are quantum. So that's why dimensions matter in field work. I will do a video at some point on how to interact with dimensions, like particularly in field work, because it's basically just kind of like a reaching of your awareness, and I don't even know how to describe it, but it's basically just like a subtlety practice that you start to adhere to in your higher dimensional states of body and awareness. You just start to like reach out and perceive different energy signatures, different geometries that exist in different dimensions. And yeah, it's very important. I would recommend that everybody does multidimensional work. Even just connecting to selves, you could even command it in your field that you're wanting to work with a sixth dimensional aspect of self. Whenever you enter the dream realm, you are entering a different dimension. So it's basically just like entering a different perception of reality is a different dimension. And when you enter the forest, you might literally enter a different dimension, like depending on if you're near a stargate, if you're near a portal. Like it becomes very fluid with how that interaction goes for you. But my greatest word of advice would be to just make sure that you're protecting your field. If you're interacting with a dimension that is not through the 12th, if you're interacting with a dimension that is, you know, potentially in the astral zone, just make sure that you're shielded. Make sure you know what you're interacting with. Don't invite anything into your space if you're not sure what it is. Just be aware of self, that you are God, you are free inside of your own unification of the Godhead. And yeah, you should find your own meaning, find your own allocation for all of these multidimensional aspects that were shared. Let it be cultivated and communicated through me for you in your own way. Like just interpret it as you will, make it what you want. All of the information that I'm sharing is from my guides and from source and from experience. So take what you want from it, allow it to serve you as best it should. I thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that this was like meaningful and useful in some way, shape, or form. Again, this was episode 4, so please make sure you check out all the other episodes if you'd like to of this series that we're doing. Please like and subscribe. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. So thankful that you watched. Please comment if you have any questions down below. And I thank you so much for being here, and I wish you so much peace and abundance and joy. And I'll see you next time.